This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
British Spy Stories Season 4 Double Agent Episode 1 The chill November air sits across the offices, houses and parks of Frankfurt as Gabrielle Lane, MI6 Senior Field Agent, turns off Friedenstrasse in the middle of the banking district and pulls up on a service road. She stops the black Mercedes van 50 yards from the security barrier in front of her. Agent Hans looks across at Gabby, and they are silent. He turns his head back and his brown eyes inspect the entrance, capturing every detail. She puts the vehicle into gear and starts towards the gate. The guards are suspicious today. She can tell. Gabby has been monitoring this building for a month, learning about the routines and timings of the security people and the employees within the headquarters of Friedrich Andersen International. The guard stops and stares at her, as if trying to recognize her from somewhere. There are 2 seconds of dead air, when the man doesn't move and Gabby can feel the hairs on her arms shift in the morning. Then the man hands back her plastic ID badge, turns and nods to his colleague. The barrier rises and the van moves on further into the roads behind the offices. The Mercedes drops down a ramp to the parking area in the basement, and Gabby pulls up into one of the spaces reserved for maintenance vehicles. Hans climbs out and opens the rear doors. Agent Laravel rises from her seat in the back of the van, already wearing her backpack. She hands Gabby and Hans theirs. Then they all walk to the lift doors, and Hans presses the button. "Set timers?" says Gabby, looking at her wristwatch, and the other 2 follow suit. 10 minutes starts now. They all press the buttons on their devices simultaneously, then walk into the waiting car. As they ascend, no one talks. They know the plan. Gabby has gone through it with them 5 times in the last 2 days. At the second floor, Hans steps out and doesn't look back. The lift doors close, and over the next minute Laravel gets out at the 4th floor, and finally Gabby emerges on the top floor of the building. On the different levels, the women are in sync. They both know the floor layout. They turn left out of the lifts, then along the main spine corridor that has offices along either side. Workers are busy at computers or talking in pairs and groups about Friedrich Andersen business. The service rooms are in the center of each floor plan. MI6 had arranged for building key cards to be stolen last week, and the women slide the cards into the door locks. The lights go green and they disappear inside. The backpacks have 2 sections. The top compartment contains the electronics, while the smoke bombs sit in the base of each bag. They pull out the electronic boxes which had been delivered yesterday from London via the BABS network, the British Intelligence Covert Distribution Network, used to move kit to any country in the world without being detected or checked. Laravel unscrews the service panel on the 4th floor and flicks through the cabling before her. She has memorized the color sequence and tugs the green pair of wires out of the loom before shredding a length of insulation. She fits the connectors from the black box to the bared copper and sticks the box onto the front panel using its magnetic grabs. Next, she pulls out the extension pole from the bag and attaches it to the backpack. She sets the smoke bomb timer, zips up the bag, then raises it to the ceiling tiles in the room, pushing one tile enough to slide the bag out of view. She collapses the pole and puts it in her cargo pants pocket, then slips out and back to the corridor. As she emerges, a security guard is there, 10 feet away. She smiles at him. "You got your badge?" he says in German. Laravel pulls the ID on the elasticated lanyard towards him, and he grabs hold, looking intensely at the photo of her, with her newly dyed blonde hair. "Are you new?" "First week," she says. He frowns. "What have you been doing in there?" He nods to the service room that she has just stepped out of. "Routine maintenance," says Laravel. "The alarms needed checking." He is still frowning. "Show me." He walks towards the service room door, swipes his card and walks inside. Laravel follows him. The room is 12 feet square, with equipment lights flashing on 3 racks across the space. The guard walks down the first aisle, looking at all of the machinery. Laravel checks her watch. 5 minutes to go. The guard walks out of the first aisle and into the second. Laravel remains standing near the door as he inspects. He sees nothing untoward in the second aisle and moves into the last one, where the black box is attached. Laravel moves in complete silence to block his exit. He still has his back to her when he sees the box. He only manages to say, "Is this box supposed to—" before she pushes the hypodermic syringe into his neck, and he falls to the floor. Laravel turns and walks out of the room, back down the corridor and to the lifts. She presses the button for the car and stands uneasily, trying to look invisible as 3 people come along for a lift while she is there. On the top floor, Gabby didn't encounter any security and now stands in the basement again, waiting outside of the lift doors. Hans' task is different on the second floor. This is where the IT control room takes up most of the space. He emerges from the lift doors, and he can see the computing and security equipment that drives the building, sealed behind a vast glass wall. He walks to the access door and swipes his keycard. The light doesn't change from its static red. He breathes out, silently, and calmly swipes again. The red glow remains. Then finally switches to green, and a low clunk indicates the door has opened. Hans walks in. In his backpack are 2 electronic devices. The first will drive the black boxes upstairs and cause a momentary blackout to the whole IT system. His second device is a bleed point that will allow London to remotely interrogate the systems within Friedrich Andersen. Hans takes out the first device and locates the rack where it needs to be fitted. He doesn't encounter any difficulties, and it is in place within 2 minutes. He checks his watch. 6 minutes to go. Next, the bleed point. He moves to rack 27 and unscrews the access plate. This device must be fitted inside the racking to remain undetected. He pulls out the connecting wires and works quickly to fit each of the 10 links. He is on link 9 when the door light turns green and an IT engineer walks in. Hans tries to continue at the same work rate, even though he now has company. But his fingers are sweaty and his screwdriver slips and rips a shard of skin from his hand. The engineer puts his head around the end of the racking aisle. "All right," says the man. "Yeah, all good." "What you working on?" "Just routine." Hans' voice wavers. His own nerves are annoying him. The man continues walking closer. Hans has his whole body turned away from him, trying to block any decent view of his work. Link 10 slips into the right terminal, and Hans screws it tight. Then he quickly replaces the racking cover. He turns to the man, who is looking at him with some intensity. "I haven't seen you before, have I?" he says. "Freelance contractor. Day rate. You should try it." Better than being staff. The man pauses. There's a second when the two of them just look at each other. I need to be going, says Hans, and pushes past the man, who doesn't seem to want to move. Hans is nearly at the door when the man calls, Hey! Yes? He walks up to Hans and stops too close for comfort. You forgot this. He holds up the screwdriver. Oh, thanks, mate. Hans takes the tool, opens the door, and walks back to the lift. In the basement, Laravel arrives and relates what happened on her floor. That injection will keep him unconscious for 15 minutes, says Gabby. Hans arrives and gives a thumbs up. They all retreat to the Mercedes, Laravel driving this time and Hans in the back of the van. They all put on headsets and Hans pulls out his laptop. 1 minute to go, says Gabby into the comms. As the van emerges from the depths of the car park, a loud explosion can be heard from the upper stories of the building. The women look at each other. One of the timers must have gone off early, says Gabby. We need to get out of here. Laravel drives towards the security barrier. The guards have been alerted by the explosion and don't raise the gate. Laravel looks at Gabby sitting next to her, but without words. One guard stands by Laravel's open window, waiting for more information before he does anything. Drive, says Gabby, almost inaudibly. Laravel slams down the accelerator and the Mercedes launches towards the exit. A second explosion booms out across the city. On the headsets, Hans says, That's the main sequence starting. The Mercedes snaps the security barrier and the guard pulls out his handgun. Several shots thud home into the back of the vehicle as Laravel accelerates towards the junction with the main road. The guard is running now and his colleague joins in the chase. Just go straight through the junction, says Gabby, and Laravel doesn't slow down. She swerves out into the road. A car sounds its horn, another smashes into a road sign, and a third hits the car in front of it, as the drivers take evasive action. Laravel pushes the vehicle faster. The two security guards are running diagonally across the front of the building forecourt to cut off Laravel's escape. They reach the road as the van arrives, and they open fire again, aiming for the tyres. Smoke is billowing out of the 2 floors of the Friedrich Anderson building now, to their right. System coming down in 3, 2, 1, says Hans. Blackout. Gabby looks out at the office building and can see the lights inside and the illuminated logo on the front wall. All go off. IT system latching, says Hans in their headsets. Laravel accelerates. She watches the guards in the rear-view mirror, but they gradually slow and stop their chase. She takes the Mercedes on for a minute, around a corner, then sharp right into an old industrial site. She drives 100 yards further on into the warehouse, at the back. Failed to lock, says Hans. Second attempt. The van's tyres squeal on the concrete floor as Laravel brings the vehicle to a halt. The women sit and wait as they listen to their comms. There are 5 seconds of silence. Then he says, Latched. Gabby takes a breath out. The 2 doors of the van open simultaneously as they scramble out. Open the back doors for Hans and they all run to a Volvo XC90 in the warehouse. Gabby gets into the driver's seat. The others slam the doors shut, and the car moves off towards the warehouse exit. Did you set the timer? She says to Hans. Yeah. 1 second later, as they emerge into the daylight, the Mercedes van explodes into a fireball, and flames lick out towards the departing Volvo. Has the bleed point worked? Says Gabby. Confirmed, he says. London a message to say they have access to the IT. Gabby turns away from the city centre and westwards, towards an MI6 safe house on the outskirts of Frankfurt. The sound of a helicopter causes Gabby to walk out and watch as it descends into the field opposite. 2 men in dark suits jump out and make sure everything is safe before they help the head of MI6 Global Operations, Sir Bernard McIntosh, out of his seat and onto the ground. The group walk towards Gabby as she waits. "Good afternoon, Black Hawk," he says as he gets near. "Hello, Sir Bernard." They walk inside and sit at the kitchen table in the farmhouse that is location Omega 9, one of the newest safe houses that MI6 have established in the EU. "All went okay, I hear," he says, pushing back some of his mop of greying hair that the rotors had disturbed. She nods. "A couple of wrinkles, but yes, objective reached, sir." "I said to you a fortnight ago that I needed to have some conversations with the PM before I could brief you further on something. I've had those chats now, and she's in agreement." Gabby remains silent. "So this is your formal briefing on Operation Barwood. We have intelligence to suggest that Friedrich Anderson, the international consultancy and banking group that you broke into, is a major player in illegal arms sales into and out of the EU and Africa. It's mostly untraceable, but they do have some white market operations, such as funding military loans for various countries. However, they have become less and less fussy about the ethics of it all, and now, if someone will pay, they'll supply." "Isn't most military spending covert anyway?" says Gabby. "Countries don't want everyone knowing what they're buying." "Agreed. But Friedrich Anderson, in the last 3 years, have focused more of their effort on funding terrorist groups, and this has grown to the extent that British security interests are now being threatened." "What's the mission, sir?" "Destroy Friedrich Anderson." She nods. "You probably know that they're owned by Amandine Lacroix, daughter of Albert Lacroix, the Swiss industrialist. He died 5 years ago when his plane crashed into the Alps. The intelligence on that accident is that she had him killed to take control of the company because he had started to question the ethics of people that they were funding. She and her husband, Vincent Fevrier, live in her father's old house on Lake Zurich," says Sir Bernard. "She's chair of Friedrich Anderson and flies back and forth between Switzerland and the office here in Frankfurt." "Isn't her husband a German politician, sir?" she says. "He is a member of the Bundestag, so he spends half of the week in Berlin." She listens, her eyes unblinking. Sir Bernard continues. "Comms branch in London have phone taps on the house, so we have some intelligence for you already. And with the bleed point that you put in place, we've got good coverage." "Okay." "There's one further element. To brief you on this next information, I've had to obtain PM approval to raise your security level to SCI, Sensitive Compartmented Information." Sir Bernard pauses. "Vincent Fevrier, as well as being a German politician, is a German spy and works as a senior field officer in the German Domestic Intelligence Service, the BFV. "That knowledge doesn't need extra clearance, sir," she says. He holds up his hand to stop her saying more. "Vincent Fevrier is also Agent Foxfold, a British double agent." "He's spying on the German government?" She looks at Sir Bernard. "On their security measures, yes," he says. "That's the reality these days, Gabrielle." "So we need to protect Foxfold while we bring down his wife?" Sir Bernard nods, then says, "You can't tell your team about Foxfold's double status. Only you have clearance." He watches her face and leaves a gap of time to let her think. Then he says, "Wouldn't mind a cup of tea before I push off back to London, Gabrielle." As the helicopter takes off an hour later, Gabby stands in the doorway of the farmhouse, watching the craft rise into the dying light of the day Laravel walks out and hands her a glass of wine. "Briefing, Jenny, tomorrow, 9 a.m, says Gabby. And they turn back into the safe house.